Hey, you're tuned in to Tech Talk with VLink, an award-winning podcast brought to you by VLink Inc.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Tech Talk with VLink, the tech podcast where we talk to those in the C-suite and management about tech subjects near and dear to our hearts. Today, our guest is Pradipta Banerjee. Pradipta serves as the Chief People Officer for Emids, a digital engineering company working at the intersection of design, engineering, and healthcare. Emids works closely with customers to advance the future of health through technology solutions. With over 20 years of experience with multiple global organizations, Pradipta aims to create opportunities that holistically advance and strengthen Emids' human capital. Prior to joining Emids, Pradipta led various leadership roles in CGI across the Asia Pacific and globally, helping to propel their growth from 3.5 billion to 11 billion. Pradipta is an avid sports enthusiast, and we're happy to have him here on Tech Talk with VLink. Welcome, Pradipta.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. Good to be here.
It's so good to hear. Now, just real curious off the top, what sports are you a big fan of?
Well, multiple sports. I mean, first is soccer or football, as you call it in this part of the world.
Yes.
Cricket. I'm from India, so therefore cricket is sort of a mini religion for us. So that's the other one. While I don't play well, I don't play cricket very well, but I do follow cricket. And I do a little bit of tennis. I'm pretty good at it. So my multiple sports is something I'm fascinated about.
Thanks for sharing that, Pradipta. You know, I thought today, Pradipta, since you are the Chief People Officer for Emids, that we talk about organizational change on this episode of Tech Talk. And because it's something we don't hear a lot about publicly. I think internally we do. Now, when it comes to organizational change, how can companies leverage their full potential and capabilities? What do you tell them?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is sort of alignment. A lot of organizations find it difficult to sort of align what they're telling their clients versus what they're doing internally, and what they're doing internally versus what they really believe in. And I think if you can connect what you believe in, what your values are, what your vision is, what your goals are, and therefore what your offerings are. If you kind of connect those three or four things together, I think that's the recipe for success. That's how I have seen organizations do very, very well. I've seen teams do very well. It's simple in some ways if you think about it, but it's awfully difficult when you're sort of dealing with a large organization, a large workforce, especially a globally sort of distributed workforce. It becomes that much more difficult. But that's what I believe. Alignment in terms of what you believe, alignment in terms of what you tell your clients, alignment in terms of what your goals are, and then how you're sort of motivating and incentivizing your workforce to sort of follow and stay in that alignment.
And to just be consistent, really. I mean, you've definitely been with large transformational companies like, let's say, CGI and now Emids. Has your view of organizational potential evolved over the years?
Well, yes, largely. I mean, I have mostly been in the services sector, and if you think about it, services and the quality of organization that you work for is directly proportional to the quality of people you have, quality of talent you have. Yeah. So I think that's fundamental, and that has not changed over the years. But what has changed is, I guess, how you sort of leverage different sets of talents to do different things within an organization. How is your marketing team sort of focused outward, whereas your delivery teams focus inward? I think those have changed. And then a lot of organizations have tried this thing of trying to do different things for different people at different points in time and not being successful. So I've seen organizations who do a very few things, but do them very, very well and sort of be leaders in that space. So I think depending on which sector you're in, where you're in, which stage of maturity you're in as an organization, you need to sort of pick the right recipe and find the alignment, as I said in the earlier conversation, find the alignment. And that, I think, is a recipe for success.
Right recipe, right ingredients, absolutely. What do you see, Pradipta, as the most common untapped capabilities you see in an organization? I'm sure you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of times organizations fail to sort of leverage 100% of the capabilities of its talent. You may have some great talent sort of stuck in different silos of the organizations, and because they're not visible, they do not have the opportunity to manifest the best version of themselves. And I think that it's a pity for an organization that they have the capability and yet they're not being able to demonstrate that. They are not being able to take it to the market, to their clients. So I think siloed organizations who have too many sort of interconnectedness, organizations who have different matrix, very complicated matrix structures, those are the organizations sort of suffer from these kind of problems. They are too siloed and not coming out as a cohesive unit, a cohesive sort of organization to sort of lead forward. So that's one. Sorry.
Definitely. Yeah.
And the second one, I think, sometimes you don't time the market right. Sometimes you time the market too early or you time the market too late, right? And therefore, having a very close connection with your clients. A lot of organizations treat clients at an arm's length, deal them at an arm's length. But actually, clients want us to be successful. There is no fun in a client to see their partner not being successful, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So therefore, right. I don't think organizations truly capture the cerebral capacity of the client to help them to win and grow. And I think that's another trick that most organizations miss. They don't really capture the cerebral capacity of the client, asking them the things they need to do for them to be more successful with that client, right? Yeah. So I think those are 2 or 3 things that I've seen working great in some places and not working so great in other places.
You're so right, though, about the point about silos. You hate to see people working in silos. I think a lot of that started with COVID and it continues. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a good thing, Yeah. So Pradipta, would you say that unlocking the potential with those people that maybe do work in the silos is more about the people or processes, or would you say it's more about mindset and motivation?
I think at the fundamental level, it's mindset and motivation. But organizations, the easier way for organizations to sort of deal with it is with processes and awards and rewards, right? If you can sort of align processes that sort of takes away silos, like for example, if you have an organization which is too matrixed, there are too complicated matrix, it just becomes difficult for people to navigate. So make them as straight line as possible, right? If you have an operating model that is too convoluted, it just becomes difficult for people to navigate and figure things out. Make them simple, as simple as possible. Sometimes simple is hard, and therefore organizations resort to complicated ways and means of running the business, right? So I think keeping it simple, keeping it as straight as possible is the best way to make things work for large sections of the workforce.
Yeah, good points there. Yeah, definitely. Well, how do you see leaders? How do they start identifying? What would you advise them to do where the hidden potential lies within their teams or business units? What would you advise them on? How do they start identifying this?
My definition of leaders are people who can sort of take a complicated idea, because business is tough. Business is complicated. Yeah. If you're working across geographies, it's complex. Different geographies have different legislations. For sure. Different geographies have different needs. It's complex. So leadership is a tough game. But I think the biggest and the most important attribute of a leader is how do you sort of look at that whole complex structure and situation and sort of break it down into very, very simple elements so that more people can adopt, appreciate, and then contribute, right? And I think that's the biggest job of leaders. Leaders look at complex problems, sort of break them into smaller pieces which are simple, and then sort of allow people to understand those and then start contributing to those. I think that's the biggest leadership challenge we have. And in today's day and age, where we're talking about, multiple countries, multiple legislation, with the advent of AI, things are getting really, really complicated, and therefore leadership is really where we need help from leaders to sort of break some of these complicated jargons, complicated ways of working, complicated understanding of the business and make them simple for people to understand and adopt.